Welcome to Infinity Nerd. My name's John Haycock, and I'm here with my co-host Mike Smith,
How's it going?
and we are here to discuss the latest episode of Loki, the newest Disney Plus series. It's season 1, episode 3,
Lamentis.
Lamentis,
Yeah.
which makes a lot of sense, and we'll get into that. But
Yeah.
first off, we'll start with spoiler free, as always, um, and then we'll move into the non-spoiler free territory. So I would suggest if you haven't watched it yet, go watch it after you listen to this first part and then continue with us later on. Starting off, what are your first thoughts about it?
Um, I mean, this technically is and isn't a spoiler. It's very clear that Loki's going to follow, from the end of last episode, they followed the variant
Right.
into the time door. And so it was expected that she was going to be in this episode quite a bit, and she was. And that was fantastic to get to be introduced to the new version of Loki,
Mm-hmm.
aka the big bad of the show. Supposedly, we'll see if that still holds true by the end of the series, because Marvel. But so far, I really liked it. We got to see Loki have a little bit more personality.
Yeah,
He kind of had more time to kind of play as a different character at different points, almost, which allows to show his strength as an actor.
definitely, definitely. And I like overall, I just like the new Loki. I think she's pretty cool, and I think you get to see, even though we don't really know that much about her, you get to see something different that I don't think you'd be able to see with the original Loki. Like, um, yes, they're very similar, but there's just completely different things that we don't know about her yet.
It's almost like a brother sister relationship where they're very similar to each other, but they will bicker. They have their differences,
Mm-hmm.
strengths and weaknesses, and it really played well. I think the chemistry between the two actors worked out really well in this episode.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Um, I don't know how much more we can talk about without getting into spoiler territory. So, if you're listening and you haven't seen it, pause it right here and go watch the episode. Um, but let's continue on. We're going to get into spoiler territory. So,
Mm-hmm.
buckle your seatbelts.
I do want to start off by saying I thought this episode was very strong because it didn't try to jump around too much, whereas the last episode had scenes with just Morbius, or I keep calling him that Mobius,
Yeah,
um, with the TVA head, and then another scene with just Loki, and kind of branching off. Whereas this one was very centered on Loki and female Loki.
yeah, definitely. Which is not my like. I'm glad they branched off a little bit and gave us a separate episode about, you know, who are these characters? I mean, why are they so different? Like in the last episode, we discussed how Loki was acting a little bit different. Maybe we'll find out in this episode why. So
I
I think
agree.
it's a good combination of uh, like just a normal TV series and not focusing on one thing, which would technically be the TVA, which they do mention a lot in the episode, but
Right.
they don't
Right.
focus around it.
Well, and the thing I actually really liked is that we didn't find out where the time variant had gone through when she opened that door.
Right.
And then it turns out that they went to a planet called Lamentis.
So,
Lamentis 1, I believe,
um,
in 2077. So the furthest in the future of the timeline that we've seen thus far,
2077.
according to Marvel Cinematic Universe.fandom.com/wiki/Lamentis #cast.
So, so that's going a little ahead. Um, so the
No,
first
because
thing
that's
we
not what
see
happened.
though, the first thing in the episode that we see is C20 in a
Oh, no,
bar.
you're right. You're right. My apologies. They
No, no,
started
you're
off with a
fine.
really good song too. That's really upbeat, and I was like, "Where are they going with this?" But
Yeah,
yes,
definitely.
they do open up in a bar. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, and it shows
C20.
C20
Yeah.
and
And
Loki, female
Lady
Loki,
Loki.
Lady Loki. I like that one. Drinking and being
Yeah.
friends, which I was like, "Is this like a past life almost thing, or like
That's what I was thinking. I was like, did they know each other?
right, 100%?"
And and then uh she starts to like try and manipulate her kind of play with words and stuff. And she's like, oh, if you get a brain freeze and you start thinking about that one thing, it's going to be frozen there in your mind. And so then she asks her to get a brain freeze again. And so she does it, and she asks the questions, who is guarding the timekeepers?
Do you think it's actually true though?
What?
The brain freeze thing?
I don't know. I didn't test it out. I don't like being in pain.
Me either.
No, but so she gets all confused and she's like, what? And then she tries to manipulate her again, being like, oh, so how long have we been best friends, And then they start talking about, she's like, you can tell me anything, right? And she's like, yeah. And then she goes, so tell me, who's guarding the timekeepers? And then it kind of goes back to her manipulating her mind, asking her questions inside the mall.
Cool. Yeah, it looks so cool.
And I'm glad that they kind of incorporated that, seeing what she was doing before the events of the end of the last episode.
Well, and it was a way that they didn't show us what she looked like until the end of the second episode, but showing us what happened in the second episode through her point of view.
Yeah.
And also let us know, which we already kind of figured, I would assume, that C20 was not at fault, that she was manipulated in some form by Lady Loki to give up the location of the timekeepers.
Right. Which later on in the episode, she does describe that power to Loki.
Yes,
I know that's kind of jumping ahead, but she has to make a physical contact first, and then depending on the person, if they're stronger willed, then she basically has to go through their mind and hold on to it. And the only way that she can keep them in that trance is if she pulls a memory from their mind. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing.
Her power is really cool. It'll be fun to see if Loki actually learns it, because it's almost like he was trying to learn it throughout the episode.
Yeah, she obviously tells Lady Loki or Sylvie where the timekeepers were and where the gold elevators were. Yeah, so they jump into the TVA. She starts deleting or resetting the guards and stuff like that,
which looked cool. Have you seen Tron Legacy? That's what it reminded me of when she was
definitely.
It was like a D-Res.
And then they end up, Loki follows her. They're in the locker room, and he looks at B-15's locker, gets the daggers out from the second episode, because B-20 wouldn't let him have the daggers. So they ended up, fighting in the hallway, and then
Ravonna Renslayer?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And she's with two guards, and she gets Loki in a chokehold, and she's like, I'll kill him. And she's like, do it. I don't care.
Right? Yeah, that was great.
I was like, oh, man, she's ruthless. She really doesn't like Loki.
Yeah, and then Loki was like, well, I'm in self-perseverance is his best attribute, and so he opened up the TEM pad, he activated it, and then transported him to a bunker somewhere else.
Yeah, which ends up being on Lamentis 1, like you said.
In 2077.
2077.
Furthest in the timeline that we've seen so far. Because the furthest before that was the 2055 or whatever it was with the rocks cart.
Yeah, and they ended up going to an apocalypse. Not just some other timeline, but they went to an apocalypse.
Yeah, another apocalypse.
And I think Loki did that on purpose, so the TVA couldn't find them.
That's a good possibility, actually. Like, it sounded like they was already programmed in there, and he just happened to hit one. That's how I took it. But I mean, that's actually.
Well, she did say that. Either. She's like, out of all the places, you picked the worst one.
Yeah, you think he would have picked like Ragnarok, but if you think about it, that would probably be the first place Mobius would look for him.
Yeah, definitely.
So it makes sense that it's just a random one, regardless if it was accidental or on purpose. Both theories, I think, work out.
I wonder if, like, on that list of things on the temp pad, it had the name, and then it had like the level of like apocalypse, like
maybe
what
like
was the worst
apocalypse.
Disaster. Yeah, like rating.
Like, well, I survived Pompeii, so I think this will be fine.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's basically just so the apocalypse is the moon above it coming and basically lost all its gravity. and is crashing towards that planet,
I wouldn't even say it lost all its gravity. It has too much gravity.
or too much gravity and pulling it towards. Yeah, I guess so.
That's how it appeared. But yeah, I think what it is because it's getting destructured or destabilized
Yeah,
somehow. And so since it's smaller, it's not holding the same amount of mass as it was, and so it's being more easily pulled
yeah,
instead of just spun. Which would make you think that, I mean, side note, that the Earth and the Moon, that the Moon would slowly come closer and closer to the Earth, like a drain, and eventually would smash into it.
yeah. I mean,
Interesting theory.
yeah. But then they end up in like this shack thing. She mentions that she has been planning her attack on the timekeepers for a long time.
And I think she said years.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think they'll do like a flashback episode or something on what this type of variant is like how she was brought up, maybe seeing why she wants to attack the timekeepers?
Episode, no. Flashback scenes, yes. Or even just a sob story that she tells him. And if they do it that way, that's actually a brilliant way to do it because we don't know if she's telling the truth or not. But if we see
That's true.
flashback scenes, we know this is the truth as far as. I mean, she could still lie through a flashback scene, but
Mm-hmm.
typically that's not how flashback scenes are written. It's usually written from the perception of the truth.
Yeah.
So I would like it if they were going to do that, that she tells him a story, maybe it's slightly a lie, and then later on we see a real flashback to see what really happened
Yeah,
and why
definitely.
she hates the timekeeper so much or why she wants to attack him so much. Yeah, I
That
didn't
makes
really think
sense.
about why she wants. I mean, I kind of thought about it a little bit, but I didn't really like come up with any good theories, I should say, as
Yeah.
to why she'd want to attack the timekeepers of all people. Loki's got a legitimate reason to want to take over, negotiate, whatever it is, against self perseverance. Lady Loki, to our knowledge, has no reason for that. She has no reason to be worried.
Yeah.
She just knows she's being chased. So if she kills them, they'll stop chasing her. But what's her overall goal? Like, are they stopping her from doing something bad, or
Or is
you know, what I mean,
she?
like a stepping stone?
Yeah. Or maybe she's already done something bad. She's just trying to create something even worse to distract them so she can finalize her goal.
Possibly. I
So
mean, I think
maybe
that's
that's
definitely
why she
something.
bombed the timeline. You know, to
I think
distract them.
I definitely think it was a distraction. Yeah.
To why else would she be gathering all those bombs and putting it in that store and dropping every single one all at the same time?
Well, here's what I think was happening, and Loki got in the way of this. Her plan was use a time door,
Mm-hmm.
bomb the timeline, right?
Yeah.
And then, while everyone's scattered and away, all of a sudden, she swarms in. She knows exactly where the guards are. She beats them easily, and then goes and kills the timekeepers or does whatever she's going to do because they're all away. But
Right.
now, since Loki was there, he stopped her from that and then teleported them through the time door. So now she wasn't able to complete that goal. So I don't think it was a longer term plan. It was this is a distraction to get all the guards out, and while the mice are away, the cats will play or whatever it is.
No
I don't
idea.
know, divide and conquer. She was just trying to separate them, giving her a clear path to the door, take out the timekeepers, and do whatever it is she needs to do with them. And then Loki stopped her and then teleported her into Lamentis One.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's how I viewed it.
I could see that happening. I mean, a lot could happen. It's Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anything could happen. So they end up uh, going through an abandoned town on the
Yes.
outskirts of the city, and I like that part where he's like, "Oh, can we charge the temp pad here?" It's a neon
Oh yeah.
sign.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh yeah, let me see the temp pad," and then he's like, "Yeah, good luck." She's like, "Well, you need something bigger than that," and so it
Yeah.
shows that she was trying to, lie to him as it was. And I thought the temp pad basically linking them together and forcing them to kind of work together is what made the
Mhm.
episode work.
Yeah, definitely. Like when they're running through that meteor shower,
Yeah,
she's like, "I'm trying to keep you alive because you have the temp pad," and then she's uh, like another meteor tries to hit her, and he saves her life, and she's like, "Don't touch me, don't grab me," or she's like, "I didn't need your help," or something like that.
yeah. Things I didn't need your help.
Yeah, and
He's
he's
like, "You were
like, "You were
so
so
weird."
weird."
Yeah, Yeah,
So I
Tom
mean, it makes
Hiddleston.
sense because she has a plan. She doesn't want to die.
Right.
Just
Neither
being
of them want to die.
obnoxious.
They both want to survive.
Yeah,
Um,
but I think it's a good reason to connect those two together.
yeah, and I mean they're basically forced to work together to find a power source on the
Yeah,
moon,
and she
uh,
said
to recharge
uh,
it.
it requires a massive power source. So it got me thinking, what charges them to begin with? Yes, I know that they're in this big city in the middle of nowhere, um, possibly just between time and space. Um, but where is this power surge?
I
Where?
can't imagine it would take that much power because she made it sound like a ship might have enough power. What do you mean it might have enough power? It should have more than enough power. I think of it like an iPhone. You know what I mean? Like it should charge maybe even double time. We'll even say 10 times the time. I mean, the technology is in 2077. Obviously, they're not from Earth, so I mean, the technology is different, but it looks like they're technologically further than us at this point, where we're
Yeah,
at now. It shouldn't take that much to charge it. Now, even just for one jump, that was my other
unless
thought. You
unless
don't
the
have to
whole
charge it all the way.
TVA is the energy source.
No, I don't think so because she knew like how to charge it, and their whole goal was about that. So I'd say no. I think there are other ways you can charge it, but my thought was, can't you find a way to charge it just enough for one jump?
Right.
Because obviously, let's say it was at 10% when they jumped the last time, then it hit 1% or whatever, and then it can be used again. Let's say it takes 10% per charge. They only need this much of a charge. They don't need it to be fully charged.
Right.
I mean, maybe not a neon sign, but I mean, there should be something. Oh, that whole city was lit up at the end.
That is true. That is a good point. If the whole city is lit, why didn't they just go to like
The
the
Radio
power
Shack.
station? Yeah, the Radio Shack.
They're
No,
almost out of
why didn't
business
they
on
just
Earth, but they're there. Lamentis one.
why didn't they just find a like
It might,
a
maybe it
power
does take.
source for the
Yeah.
city?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't even think of that, but maybe it's because they didn't know where to look. Whereas on a ship, they get away, and then they could use the ship while they're in safety to do that, or use the ship to just fly wherever. So maybe it was a
Good
safer
point.
option. You gotta think too. There's always deleted scenes in these kind of things, so maybe they do talk about it. Like, why can't we just use the city power? And then she's like, "Are you an idiot? We can't use city power. Do you know where it's buried? I don't. We don't have
Oh
time.
yeah, that's
Let's
a
get
good
to the
point.
arc and then get out of here. Then we can worry about charging it up later."
Yeah,
So I mean, that's kind of like head canon for me. That was either thought of or whatnot, but it is a possibility they could have charged it there. We don't know for sure. I don't know how many double A's it takes. You know.
uh, yeah. That I mean, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I mean, you got a whole city full of power. Use it.
Yeah, I just like I
Everybody's
said, I
gonna
think
die anyway.
I just don't think they had enough time. If they could freeze time and they could look for it, sure. But I think with the time crunch that they had because of the impending doom that was heading their way,
Mm-hmm.
I would say it makes more sense to go to the arc to save yourself one way or the other, or
Yeah, that's
both.
true.
And whereas the other way is just potentially having a success to do maybe one of the two things. So I think it was still the smarter choice. I was just saying it's a possibility they could have tried to charge it there.
Yeah.
Now there's no more Radio Shack. That was the last one
Um.
too.
So moving on, so they go across this house. Um.
Yes, it's like Hut. Yeah.
Yeah, and Sylvie pulls out her sword, and he's like, "You do realize that uh, like communication is so much better than just brute force, essentially." She's like, "Noted," and still goes to the door with the sword. And then the best part is when she opens the door and just gets blasted away by that lady.
Yeah, her personality almost reminds me of Loki from Avengers. Kind of like, I'm a god. Like, don't worry about it. I got this.
Mm-hmm.
And they go to do it, and all of a sudden, boom! You know, they get knocked on their feet, whether it's through the blaster or a Hulk.
Yeah.
That's his kryptonite. Is the Hulk.
Oh man. Yeah. And then Loki tries to do it with his shape shifting ability. Goes as her husband.
Which I thought was such a low blow to begin with.
I thought it was great.
I mean, it was great because of her reaction to it. He hasn't
Yeah.
said anything that nice to me in 30 years, you know, or whatever it was. And so I thought that was great, but I thought it was kind of a low blow to be like, oh, she looks like she's lonely. What if the husband had died?
Yeah, I know. That's what I was thinking.
No. If he made himself look like just a random villager who's dressed in similar garb and says, "Oh, we need your help," blah 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 blah, it might have actually gone. That'd been more guile, as he put it, I think, and more tactful than what he did, which was I'm going to
Yeah.
pretend to be your potentially dead husband.
Well, that's the only thing he had to go off of because he hadn't ran into anybody. He hasn't seen anybody else.
That is true.
Those are pretty much the first people that they stumble upon.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
He could have just done the garb though. He could change his clothes.
it's true. Because
He's
I mean,
he,
he
did,
does
he even
he
did it
does
this
do that
episode
later.
in the same
Yeah,
episode.
yeah, he does that later. So
His face didn't matter. It was the clothing that mattered.
going on to that. So
Thanks, Kevin Feige.
yeah, seriously, right? Um, so they find out about the arc.
Yeah.
The lady says they can't get a train ticket because essentially they're just giving it to rich people.
Which is how it would be.
Yeah.
Which is why I need to get rich really fast.
Yeah, right. So you can get a train ticket to somewhere else.
Flavor
The
Town.
Earth goes to shit. Yeah.
Whatever that is. Yeah, so they decided to go get a ticket or try to smuggle their way onto the ship, and he of course changes his outfit. What I first thought was weird is that he didn't have the mask down because
Yeah.
everyone around him did until he got later in, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like he had his visor down or up, and everyone else's was down at that very part of it. And then a little bit later, some of them, which I don't know if they're higher ranking officials or what, but their masks were up.
Yeah, like when they get to the train opening, and
Yeah,
there's those two guards. Yeah, they have their masks up.
yeah, but this one he didn't, and you would think if you're trying to blend in, be a faceless person.
Yeah. Well, which is kind of funny because he does that. He kind of does that whole robot thing. Like he has that robot voice, and he's kind of acting like a robot. Like he's not going
A little
beep, boop,
bit,
beep,
yeah.
boop, but he's like, just plain voice, plain actions.
Yeah, but it worked. I mean, his because she enchanted the guard, so it made it work so they could get onto the ark. Then I thought when he sat down next to her, why is he still dressed as this? You think this is like the fancy lounge, like this is first class? Why would a guard be off duty right now? That was kind of one of my other thoughts. So I had a few, I don't want to say very, very minor problems story wise of like I would do it differently, but obviously I'm not the writer, and Marvel obviously believes in the writers they have, and they do have good writers. The show is still really good. These are little nitpicks if anything.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I think that part kind of plays into what's going to happen later. So like, after they have that whole conversation on the train and stuff like that, where he talks about his mom
Yes, they sit
and all
down.
that, and they have those
get,
nice moments and stuff like that.
which was really nice. And then they're like, "Hey, you go to sleep." No, 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 you go to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
One thing that I loved, and I did post this onto our social media, but they ended up finally acknowledging that he is bi,
Yep,
which I think is awesome because I mean that comes from the comics.
it does, and I like that they kind of glossed over it without just not saying anything about it, and not making it too big of a deal because we know that Disney tends to be a little bit more traditional, and with some things they'll slowly kind of push the boundaries a little bit. So I thought for them to just kind of it's a matter of fact, and that's the other thing because some shows whenever they deal with anything that's not straight, basically they're like, oh, we have to make a big deal about it. Not that it's not a big deal, but people are people. They love who they love, and with Loki, you're just like, yeah, that's just what it is, and matter of fact, and that's how it should be. And so I thought that was a good way to do that. And again, I really liked the Loki and Sylvie time that they had before she passed out. And he's like, "Oh, you want a drink? Champagne?" And she's like, "No." He's like, "All right, more for me, basically."
Yeah.
And he cheers as himself.
Cheers as himself.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, but then he ends up getting drunk, and she wakes up to him singing a song in Asgardian,
which was cool.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder if it's an Asgardian, what the hell are they speaking in Thor 1 and 2 and 3?
I don't know.
I think it's English for our purpose. But I mean, you got to think about it. Thor automatically knew English when he came to Earth in the first movie.
That's true.
So maybe it's they could have said ancient Asgardian. Um, you know what I mean? Like I know, like in Lord of
Mhm.
the Rings, they've got like different forms of Elvish like language. Like there's an older form that's not as used as much. It's kind of like think of
Right.
like Old English or proper
Right.
English, and then you
Yeah.
got American English, which is terrible. Um, and so the difference being that, but they didn't really specify. It just said like singing Asgardian song or something like that, which was still
Yeah.
nice because it's a nice nod to where he came from. Um, and it just showed him having a lot of fun. I think Tom Hiddleston loved that scene, like just to film it itself. He just seemed to either he's that great
Right.
of an actor, which I know he is, but I think he legitimately had fun with that scene.
Oh, I would too, for sure. Um,
Not me. I
but
don't like singing in front of people.
going back into what you said about taking off the outfit,
Mm.
he's back in his TVA outfit.
Right, and this is what made me realize maybe my theory was kind of wrong. Like, why did he take it off? Take off the soldier, what is it? The guard outfit.
Yeah.
Because then they started asking for the ticket. And he was so drunk that instead of producing the ticket with magic, he produced
He
the
did the,
fireworks.
yeah.
Which I'm glad they showed him doing that to her just before, because otherwise it's like, why the hell would he just do that? But it's
Yeah.
because it was almost like a reflex. You know, like
Right.
you always put your keys in one pocket and you go to look for your keys. That's the first instinct. So for him, it's just like muscle memory.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, and I'm sure that it's very similar to do this and get keys versus this and get fireworks or tickets, I
Right.
should say. So I could see why he did that. And so then they started a brawl, which was fun to watch.
Well, before that, actually,
Oh, okay.
there's a little nod to the first Thor movie, um,
Oh yes, I
where he
love
grabs
this.
the glass, and I laughed
Yes.
so hard, and I'm so happy they put this in here, because maybe it's just an Asgardian thing. I don't know, but he grabs the glass and he finishes it. And he's like another, and he breaks it because in the first Thor movie, he
Hmm.
does that, but he explains that's what we do in Asgard.
Yeah, I
That's
actually leaned over to Nate. It's
proper
like
for
that's what they
us.
did in the first Thor film. She's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So I thought that was kind of a cool little Easter egg nod type thing
I
in that
did
little in
too.
there.
And the more they can show him and Thor having similar personality traits or behaviors, I think the better because they were raised for hundreds or thousands of years or whatever it
Yeah.
is together. They're going to be bound to have some similar traits, like
Mm-hmm.
another. Especially if that's like a formality thing rather than it is a personality thing. So I thought that was great as a great nod, both to Asgard with the song
Mm-hmm.
and Thor 1, where it all started 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago this
Wow.
year. Thor 1 came out. And so I thought that was really great. And then the brawl starts because of the whole ticket fiasco. And the fight is really good. I feel like she's a better fighter than he is. I don't know if you thought that too or not. I was going to ask you
I
that.
feel like she's got a little bit more experience considering that she's been on the run for a long time.
That makes sense.
I mean, yeah, he has experience, fighting Thor and stuff and growing up and going to battle and stuff, but I don't think it's more of a I'm fighting for my life type thing. It's more of I'm fighting with other people for a cause.
Yeah, I could see that.
And even then,
Um,
like when you first see him fight in the first Thor movie, it doesn't seem like he's doing a whole lot. Like he
right.
does his teleportation and stuff and stabs people, but
I think he
it's
relies on tricks, so he doesn't have that much skill. Whereas she
exactly
didn't do any tricks; she did all skill. So I
right.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I was really surprised that he got kicked out of the trade.
Yeah, because he kicks someone out the window and he's like, bye bye. And
Right.
then one of the guards picks him up and throws him out the window.
That's very unexpected, but I thought it was cool that showed someone getting thrown out the window first.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, okay, so this is the fight, blah blah blah. You think everything's gonna be fine because they have to get off the planet, and then he gets kicked out, and then I think she realizes that the only way for her to get out is through him. So I think she jumps out willingly. Am I
Well,
right?
because yeah, she does because she realizes that he has the temp pad.
Right. He's got the temp pad, so she's like, basically, oh, I got to do this. So she
Yeah.
jumps out, and then she does this scream, and I thought the mountainside behind her was gonna collapse a little bit more. You know what I
But when
mean?
she's all frustrated and stuff,
And she's like,
like
yeah,
because
she does like a
they're
power
all
scream.
talk, so they talk and she's like, give me the temp pad, and he's like, fine, and he makes it appear and it's destroyed. So she's all
Right.
mad and frustrated. Yeah. And in my notes, I was like, I wish I could make an impulse like that when I get mad because
Not
that would
me.
be so awesome.
It would be pretty cool though to see, like, you could see like the water like change direction, or like
Yeah,
the birds just fly away. Something that'd
yeah.
be cool. But yeah, so I thought for a second that there'd be a small rock slide. Not that it would be important to the story, but just like in the background
Hmm.
when she screamed. But yeah, and so they didn't have much time left, and they realize that they could still get on the ark itself.
So when they're talking, um, and they're walking, and he's like, do you think you can just, brainwash me so I can sleep?
Oh right, yes, yes, yes.
And she's like, it doesn't work like that. And so she describes how it actually works,
Mm-hmm.
which is, by the physical touch and then grabbing the mind. And then if she needs to, she pulls a memory, like with C20, she pulled a memory and had to keep that going. Um, but then she mentions that after she pulled a memory, and it was a memory for when she lived on Earth, C20.
Yes.
So he's like, wait, that doesn't make any sense because Mobius told me that everybody who worked at the TVA
Mm-hmm.
was created by the timekeepers.
Yes, that was a big thing I forgot to mention too earlier. So I'm glad
And
you pointed that out because that was a
yeah,
big deal.
and so Sylvie was like, no, that's not how it works. uh they're real people
And they're
from
all
Earth.
variants,
Yeah, they're just time variants.
which
And
makes
he's
you wonder
like,
if that's what Loki's was. They were planning for Loki to become one of them because
that would
he
make
fit
sense.
right in.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that was just my
No,
thought.
no,
So
no, that would make a lot of sense to make him an actual variant. um and possibly even go like after his old selves and stuff like he's doing in this show,
yeah,
just in
but it
case
makes you
they.
wonder, like, is the TVA really a good place? I mean, obviously these are humans who were, or other creatures or species or whatever, but these are
Right.
people who were variants at one point or another because they weren't meant to exist. And instead
Hmm.
of erasing them, they reused them and repurposed them. So why is the Time Variant Authority being like, well, we're going to delete you? Is it because they don't have any room for him, or is it because he's too
Maybe it's the type
dangerous?
of variant. Maybe they use those variants.
Human variants only.
Maybe that, or maybe it's just like people from the future being like, yeah, like they mentioned in the first episode. Maybe it's just some guy wanting to go back in time and get rich from oil in the ground.
Right.
So thinking back to like Mobius's character, maybe he was one of those. Maybe he just made a mistake and went back in time, or just wanted to go back in time just to see what it was like. And then it created a Nexus event, and they snatched him up, brainwashed him, wiped his memory of his past life, and made him into the TVA.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see if like they start revealing like over the course of the seasons, like Mobius's past,
Yeah.
or even the leader. Is she in on it? Is she maybe a timekeeper? I mean, because why don't they show themselves? I get they're busy,
Hmm.
but I mean, can't they hit pause?
Like
There's
playing a
like
video game.
pause in the timeline. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. That's a good point.
I'm full of those.
Okay, I was gonna suggest maybe the TVA isn't even a real thing. Maybe it's all in their heads, but
No, it's a real thing.
no, it's a real thing. I corrected myself. You
I'll
okay
allow
over
it.
there?
I was trying to see if I can find the charger for my headset, but it's okay. Um,
Um, yeah. So they're actual people. They're brainwashed, obviously.
And so they race through the city. They pass the Radio Shack that we talked about before, and
Yep.
there's some fighting scenes that happen while they're trying to do that, which I thought was cool. And I like seeing them kind of running through the thing, and he's kind of looking back. It almost reminded me of like a roller coaster ride, the way it was directed. Like it kind of just followed them like a ride would,
Yeah.
if you were like in one of those kind of virtual simulators and you're sitting there and you're watching the thing. And then they finally get close enough, but they're not on it yet. They get almost to the front of the line, basically, where I think it's just a few guards in front of them, and all of a sudden, and this big meteor destroys it. Which I actually thought was going to happen was the Ark was going to take off without them,
Yeah.
To see it get destroyed and the morale of the people around them, including them, just like dropped like so
Oh,
much
hardcore.
because knowing that I didn't get a chance to even get on the ship, and then the ship didn't even get away anyways. So it's like there was no hope, there was no point, there was no rescue, which is
Yeah.
kind of what Sylvie mentioned before was that you know, part of what they were trying to do was change the timeline enough to survive.
Yeah.
But I loved it because now
Which they could have done
they're
easily without
stranded.
being detected. Even though
Yeah,
they're
if they had
changing the
more time.
timeline, the world's still going to be destroyed.
Yeah, if they had more time, it would have worked. But like if they didn't get on the train, they just went straight to the Ark. But I think
Right.
they had to get on the train to
Well,
get close enough to the Ark, kind of
yeah.
thing. But yeah, so it's gonna be very interesting. Nikki was theorizing that the TVA is gonna step in just in time, kind of thing, at the beginning of the next episode.
You know, I wonder, that makes me think now. I wonder if Loki got drunk on purpose. So something like that would happen and they would be stranded so that the TVA could find them. Maybe he's leaving breadcrumbs or something.
I think it's a bit of a stretch, but it's possible. I think it's a bit, like I said. I don't know if that's exactly what happened. They might
Mm.
just. I mean, they again. I think time is paused there, so they can just stop and look at every single spot. Which
Yeah.
theoretically, if they have that ability anyways, and they're looking at the apocalypses, why do they even have to pick just one? Can't they just send a group to every single one? I mean, I
Yeah.
guess they have to get authorization, and that was part of it. But yeah. So I mean, all the people of Lamentis One are basically going to die. We know Loki and Sylvie are not going to die. The only thing that makes sense is I agree with Nikki's theory is that the TVA is going to step in.
Yeah. Definitely.
They could even die. What would be cool is it shows them dying and then they bring them back. But no, if they do, then they captured her. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens, or if there's another variant, or maybe she has an ability that she hasn't really disclosed before, or she knows a way to get through. There's portals in between time and space, or something. But overall, I think this was a really solid episode. I really liked seeing Sylvie and Loki interact. I think again their chemistry is very much fire and water. It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like Captain America and Black Widow during Winter Soldier. How
Yeah, definitely.
they bickered a lot, but they also had some nice moments where you could tell that they're friends.
Yeah.
And these two definitely could be friends in different situations. And I think after this season, because I don't think she's going anywhere, and he's definitely going anywhere if we're having a Loki season 2, that they're going to be working together in the future.
Yeah. And I hope they keep her around because I like her a lot.
I do too. She's got some edge to her, and she doesn't just let Loki say whatever he wants.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Before we wrap things up though, I noticed something. Um, so when they're running through the town or that city trying to get to the Ark, a pillar falls and he's like, "Oh, I got it." And he stops
right.
it and he pushes it back up.
Oh yeah,
Is that new?
I think that's new.
Because that it got me thinking if it's new,
Where did he learn it?
then maybe he's adapting into that other Loki that he's supposed to be, and learning new powers, essentially. Because uh, Sylvie earlier on the train talked about um, the way that she learned her little mind trick ability is she taught herself.
Yeah, but he was confident. He knew it. He had it. Like he's done this before, and I don't think we've seen him do that.
I
I mean, I
don't think
just
we
rewatched
have.
the movies. At least I mean, I'm not up to Thor Ragnarok, but this isn't the same Loki. This is the
No,
Loki
it's
from
not.
Thor and Avengers, and I have
Yeah,
rewatched those recently. And in neither of those do I recall him doing anything about just putting things up. He's got illusions, but reversing time.
I don't even know if it's reversing time. I think it's more of like a force thing where he grabbed it with some sort of energy and pushed it back up,
I don't know because it felt like it was going back up almost in rewind,
kind of like
and that
Doctor
could have been
Strange type thing.
yeah. I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, maybe it is something that now he's taught himself. He's like, wait, she can teach herself stuff? Then I'm just going to do this. And he doesn't have confidence that it made it work.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, great episode. I'm excited to see where it goes from here. I think Sylvie's a great addition to the show.
Definitely.
And so it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, definitely. If any of you have any theories or comments on what we discussed today, uh, go ahead, share your thoughts in the comments. And of course, like, subscribe, share the content. Definitely helps out the channel grow more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, along with Anchor and YouTube. So go ahead, follow us on social media, like our posts, get our name out there. All right, then we'll see you next time. And until then, nerd on.